Welcome to the Magic Morning Wood with yes. See, that surprised him, didn't it?
That's how a professional does it.
It's not. How dare you? Have you listened to the other podcasts? Yes, I'm Darren Jones. Hopping over from FFOs and Shawscope and not in Shawscope. And over there, that's
Clive Davis.
And down there.
And I'm Ron. Hi, everybody. Hello.
I'm probably not going to work on Zoom anyway, is it? Because I imagine it's like we're all seeing different configurations of the windows.
Right, yeah.
So, keep them guessing though, Anyway, I'm guest curating this episode of Magic Morning Wood. And we're having
thanks for coming in, Darren.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you.
Yes.
You won't be saying that by the end.
Well, you were on last time, and then yes, you kind of reset our algorithm for me and Ron for your two choices. But then we thought, well, you might as well just come on and talk about them yourself as well, right?
Very nice of you to offer.
So here you are, and so
it's been a long time since we've met previously.
Yes,
as you can tell by the fact that we're wearing exactly the same clothes.
Yes, sorry for our extended hiatus and also our lack of personal hygiene. We've been wearing these for 2 weeks.
Coordinated. We went back and looked at the video and said, okay, we were wearing that, so we gotta wear the same thing, right? So
yes,
that's not what I did. I just kept the same clothes on.
Yeah, never changed.
Yes,
bathed in 3 weeks.
That diaper of yours must be threadbare by now, Darren.
It is. The astute viewer will notice that I'm actually a little bit higher than before due to the full diaper.
Right. Oh. And the flies around you.
That's it. Yeah.
So, when you're not busy shitting yourself, what films have you chosen for us to talk about today, then, Darren?
So, kind of in line. I mean, I wanted to do. Just because I'm a huge fan, I wanted to do a Lucio Fulci double bill because I haven't ever been on a podcast and spoken about Lucio Fulci before. Right. So that's my excuse to talk about Lucio Fulci. Okay. And kind of in line with the last film that we did. Not that we're necessarily slavish to the algorithm, the guest, but I kind of thought, oh well, maybe I want to do a Western. That's not really a Western, just like Yellow Hair and the Fortress of Gold, which we did last time. So I want to do, first of all, Lucio Fulci's For the Apocalypse from 1970 something. I forgot to write the year down.
75.
5.
Yeah, I got it.
Well done, Ron.
I knew you'd do it one day.
And then I want to hop back in time to, I think, and I didn't write this down either, to I think 72.
Let's see if Ron can get it right as well. What do you got?
What was it called again?
Don't torture a duckling.
Right. Yeah, I can't remember. 71, was it?
Oh, almost got it. 72, yeah.
There you go. I got that bit right.
I filmed in 71.
You're not allowed to steal my lines.
Yeah, so then we're going to have a look at a bit of rural giallo-esque stuff that he did a bit earlier in his career. And one of these films is a lot more famous than the other. Most people who are into genre stuff, and especially Lucio Fulci, have heard, Don't Torture a Duckling is quite high on their list of stuff to watch if they haven't watched yet, and certainly on their radar. I think For the Apocalypse is much less so.
Yes, but I would say both not the films that spring to mind immediately for kind of non-Fulci fanatics thinking about Fulci. They think Zombie Flesh Eaters, the Beyond, a film that we've talked about before on House by the Cemetery. I think they're still not quite. They're not the things that most people would go to as, even though one of these is maybe the best thing he ever made, or certainly what he thought the best thing he ever made was, right?
Yeah.
Duckling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although certainly an argument can be made that For the Apocalypse is the best he made. But
well, we'll get
in fact, that's what.
Yeah. In
But
fact,
anyway, we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
Yeah. So obviously, had you seen either of these before by any chance, Ron?
No.
Okay. And not overly familiar with Lucio Fulci in general, right? Other than I know we did House of the Cemetery.
Yeah, and I'd seen Zombie many years
ago.
Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Did you? Was that something you enjoyed or rated?
Yeah, I think it was back when my my Canadian horror movie friends, we were kind of into, we weren't quite as experimental and investigative as you guys were. But because I think we had less to choose from at our local video stores. But
right. Well, there's a silver lining to that, because you and your friends didn't watch Bundra. So
right, yes. But yeah, I think Zombie kind of came across our radar for a little bit, and I remember I was watching it, and I have a memory of watching it with them. So we did get through that one. So
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can certainly see the style. He's got a very distinct style. He uses camera work in a particular way in all three films. Zombie Flesh Eaters, that For the Apocalypse, and Don't Touch a Duckling. But yeah, anyway, on to For the Apocalypse, I guess.
I Quattro del Apocalisse, in my very bad Italian.
So directed Lucio Fulci, obviously. What are we doing? Fabio Testi. Good old Fabio Testi.
You mean Fabio Testi?
Fabio Testi.
Sorry, we should probably explain that for people, because we are going to put the video up of this one. So me and Darren used to have a friend briefly from Milan, who was his name Marco. His name was Marco Martini, actually, wasn't it? Hello, Marco Martini, if you're listening.
It might be, yeah.
And I suppose growing up watching Fabio Testi in lots of Polizio films with car chases during the 70s, whenever he referred to Fabio Testi, he would go, Fabio Testi, because I guess that's him behind the steering wheel. That's why we did that.
I thought it was because it was Testi that he was playing with his balls. Fabio Testi. Testes.
Once again, mind in the gutter, Ron.
That's usually my job, to be fair.
To be honest, mine too. But Ron beat us to the punch this time.
Yeah. Who else? Yes. Who else have we got? We got good old Thomas Millian.
Yes. I feel a bit weird, actually, being on a podcast talking about Thomas Millian without Nick. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do that. So I hope he forgives.
Why is that?
Why he brings up Thomas Millian in everything. Everything. I think any podcast we've ever done, he mentions Thomas Millian. Somehow he shoehorns him in there. He's a big Thomas Millian fan.
Yeah. He sometimes nude Lynn Frederick, which is interesting.
Always good to see us. A topless Lynn Frederick.
Yeah. Michael J. Pollard. Who else is there? Harry Bard.
Yeah.
And some other people. I'm not going to reel them off.
Well, the other notable one, I suppose, is Donald O'Brien, who plays the chef.
That's right.
He's
yeah.
Dr. Butcher, MD, right?
Yes. Yeah, I forgot about him. Yeah. So, plot rundown, which is quite convoluted. Fabio Testi plays Stubby Preston, who's like this kind of card sharp kind of
great name.
Brilliant. Yeah. Very Western name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Playing like a card sharp, gets caught by the sheriff and gets slung in jail with the three of the main characters, who's Bunny, who's a pregnant prostitute, Michael J. Pollard, who's just a drunk, and Harry Bard, who's
nuts.
Who's crazy, and presumably kind of recently emancipated slave. As well. That's kind of vibe going on about him.
It's 1873, isn't it? And it's specifically it's Salt Lake Flats in Utah. And we should mention as well, so this is something because I only watched this film last night, so I didn't have it. If I'd have watched it a few days ago, I would have tried to watch some of these other things or read some of these things to put this. So this is, from what I understand, even though it's not credited, this film, the screenplay for this film, is roughly based on 2 short stories by what's his name? Bret Hart.
Bret Hart.
Yeah. Who
not the wrestler Bret Hart.
No. Who was, I was looking, I did have a chance to look him up. He seems to be quite a big deal in his day, and a contemporary of what's his name? Huck Finn and
Mark Twain.
Yes, Mark Twain. Yeah. So apparently they were. Apparently Mark Twain had a line, something along the lines. I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, "Bret Hart is the loveliest man I've ever met, and Bret Hart is the most horrible man I've ever met," or something along those lines. And he was a pretty big deal in his day. And he has these 2 short stories. One is called Outcasts of Poker Flats, and another one, Luck of Roaring Camp. And not only is this film based on these 2 short stories, and apparently is relatively faithful, except the Thomas Millian character isn't in it. But these have been filmed a shitload of times, like going back to the silence. There's even like a John Ford version of Outcasts of Poker Flats, and the 2 have often been filmed together for some reason. So I suspect, if I had to guess, like I said, I didn't have time to either read the stories or watch the other film version, but I think there's an Outcasts of Poker Flats from 1937, and I think that might be the one, if at all, that might be the one Fulci might have seen when he was a kid or something. Because all these guys in Argento and Leone, they all grew up on these American westerns. You know, like What's Fun in the West is a huge homage to all of these films, right? So, and we'll get to it a little bit later because there's a few other things that popped up as well. But so I think for us, when we first saw this film, certainly Darren, when we saw For the Apocalypse, we didn't have any idea of the context, right? In that.
No, well, actually, you just told me the context because I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
Just now.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I don't think we ever would have considered that it was, that it's kind of has its roots in like a much more classic, old style American Western. So
yeah, it would be worth going and tracking those originals down, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I will watch that.
Yeah.
It's just a shame I didn't have time to do it in time for this. And I didn't tell either of you because it was last minute, so I didn't want to. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of twists and turns in this, but in essence, they break out of jail, or they're let out of jail by this corrupt sheriff who's basically arranged to have the whole town murdered so he can clean up on the steal all the money from the town, essentially. Send them out into the wilderness. They encounter this psychopath Chaco, played by Thomas Millian.
Apparently basing it on Charles Manson.
Yeah. Fall afoul of him, he kind of ties him up, rapes Bunny, and then it's just this kind of journey of theirs to kind of get over the mountains back to civilization.
Right. Doesn't he? I think he gives them peyote, doesn't he? And while tripping, he
ties them up. Or actually, it's even worse than that, isn't it? So he gives them peyote, and they're all tripping, and then he gets Clem, who's the alcoholic Michael J. Pollard character. He gets him to tie everyone up and kind of humiliates him, then rapes Bunny in front of Fabio Testi's character.
That whole thing is really, like, even from the beginning, like when he gives so everyone's swilling down the peyote with some whiskey or something, and Chaco like kind of gets Michael J. Pollard to like beg him to spit the whiskey in his mouth, doesn't he? To wash the whole thing is very very fucked up kind of SM play.
Yeah, but it just kind of adds to Thomas Millian's kind of menace in it, because he's properly menacing in this, I think.
I mean, yeah, it's a classic. I mean, Thomas Millian's been menacing many times, right? But he always seems, this like his character in was it Sonny and Jed as well, and well, take your pick of fucked up Thomas Millian, almost human,
but he's particularly unhinged in this one.
Yeah, because when he turns up at first, all the other characters seem to think, oh, great, we've got this guy who's really good at hunting and we won't starve. But I think from the beginning, the viewer's like, oh, no, there's something wrong with this dude. Like,
yeah. And then, so anyway, they get abandoned. They eventually get set free. They hook up with some sort of Mormons, some Christian people, who subsequently get slaughtered by Thomas Millian again. Then Bunny gives birth. All spoilers here, by the way.
Oh yeah, spoilers.
Bunny gives birth. Yeah. Bunny gives birth, dies in childbirth. Clem dies of a gunshot wound, because Thomas Millian shot him. Bud, is it? Yeah, Bud, I think, is Harry Bard's character. Bud goes off and just goes and lives in a graveyard after having fed his companions human flesh from Clem's corpse.
He ate his butt.
Yeah, pretty much. Thomas Millian tortures a sheriff with his sheriff's badge. That's a famous scene out of this film. Then they go to this male-only village, or rather, Fabio Testi goes to this sort of men-only village and then gives the kid away, and the kid's all looked after, and it's all very wholesome. And then finally catches up with Chaco and just
gets his revenge.
Yeah, and unleashes hell on Chaco. The end.
But in the most unsatisfying revenge.
Yeah.
That's what it's interesting. So this film takes a lot of different, but in general, it's kind of quite depressing and grim. And then with the whole baby stuff, which reminded me of, again, the Three Godfathers looking after the little kid, and also reminded me of Years Raising Arizona as well, a little bit. That kind of vibe. And you think they're going to go out on a high, right? And then he's going to take his rightful vengeance. But Fabio Testi is obviously so traumatized by all the other events, but also including, I mean, Fabio Testi is clearly not a tough guy, right? He's a bit of a kind of Dundee womanizer, loan shark, right? He's not cut out for the Wild West at its wildest, right? So after he's gunned down, he just looks like he wants to throw up, doesn't he? He doesn't look. He doesn't look in the slightest bit as it's him just walking off, and accompanied by the. So the score for this one, we should mention as well, is very atypical, right, for spaghetti western.
Yeah, 70s folk.
Yeah.
Yes, like this psych folk. It's like a credit to Fabio Frizzi, Vince Tempera, and Franco Bixio. It's very incongruous. It's not what you expect at all. It's not a classic old sweeping western score. It's not Morricone, like you said. It's this psychedelic kind of hippie folk
pop music.
But it works really quite well. And it's interesting to note that this is, it comes right at the tail end of the Euro Western cycle as well, right? Like the only other one from 75 I can think of, which people remember now, is Kioma, right? That's but by this point the Euro Western had peaked years ago.
Yeah.
So it's like a last gasp kind of. It's like one of the last decent Euro Westerns of the cycle, I think. So, well, let's turn to young Mr. Scott. How did you get on with 4 of the Apocalypse?
Well, I think Yeah, how did I get on it? Well, I thought there were moments of real greatness in there. I thought there were some of the sequences were really fun and really interesting and gritty and sort of involving and like really absorbing is what I'm looking for. And they're really absorbing, but and then and then and then it would just alternate with other stuff, which was like a real slog. Like it was like, yeah, with the pacing would just like go down. So I get that it was sort of episodic and there was no real through. It was kind of hard to follow the through line. um I did like a lot of it, but I did find my focus wavering occasionally, especially during the part with the all men town get sort of just drone on a little bit. So I think it could have used some editing. It could have been a little bit shorter, but I thought the all the characters were interesting, and I thought they all were well played, and I thought it was a interesting mix of it was not what I was expecting. So I was surprised that it was something different. I thought I was kind of expecting just like a four bad people in the West, you know, kind of thing. But it was interesting character drama.
It's an unusual
yeah,
Western for sure.
Yeah. So
coming back,
definitely has, you know, splattered with like lots of like some gore here and there as well, and a really nice you know, mustache twirling you know, villain. But it was a lot more kind of subtle and understated than I expected. So yeah, so
right. Yeah. Now, coming back to it this time, watching it, to a certain extent, I will agree with you, Ron, that the 104-minute running time is a little too rambling, I think. But for me, overall, there's so much of interest here, and it's so unusual. And even though I'd seen this before, it was still unusual and not what I expected, because I'd kind of forgotten a lot of it. So yeah, it still held. I don't know. I don't know exactly how to put it. Like, it is a very good film, but it is deeply flawed as well. But for some reason, the flaws are kind of integral to what I like about it as well, weirdly.
Yeah.
There's a few films, actually, another example, it's a different sort of film, and this isn't quite as good, but Sam Peckinpah's Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, actually, is, if you actually seriously want to be objective about that film, it is a kind of a hot mess. But that kind of works in its favor because it seems more raw or something. And I know me and Darren have spoken about Lucio Fulci in these general terms before. Like, we've always preferred Fulci to Argento, right? And I think one of the things we like, if you're going to compare the two, is Argento's extremely stylized down to the smallest detail, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's just everything is
precision, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah. Whereas Fulci's films always just seem like a bit more like raw meat or something. They've just been torn out. And I think me and Darren have always been we've always been, as they would say nowadays, Team Fulci more than we are Team Argento, right? I think compare the two.
Yeah, and I think that if you want to compare Fulci and Argento, I think that Argento often, most of the time, in my opinion, goes, again, with what you were saying, with the stylized, horror, he goes from, precision into kind of cold, clinical.
That's how
horror. I think you lose, and you lose the emotion then.
Exactly.
Whereas for me, Fulci's all about emotion.
This is a very
emotional
film.
Terror.
When Lynn Frederick's character, again, spoiler, dies after childbirth. I mean, I found myself, I'm not crying or anything, but like it's quite a grim death, right? You feel it, right? Because she's like shivering and then
Fabio
Tessie, it's not a pleasant scene.
No.
As
you know, and I found myself welling up a bit with the old men and the baby as well. You know, it's like, oh, that's nice, isn't it?
But that's because you're a huge fan of the Three Men and a Baby franchise, isn't it?
I am. Yeah.
Especially, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Three Men and a Little Lady your absolute favourite?
No. If you're going to go down the route of late 80s baby focused comedy, it has to be Look Who's Talking.
Look Who's Talking.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Or Look Who's Talking 2.
That's the Motherlode, that is.
Yeah, Look Who's Talking 2. TOO.
There we go. Next time on Magic Corner Wood.
How about Baby Geniuses?
Yeah. No, but I think it's so there's and I think Fulci has really benefited in easing off of the go on this as well.
Yeah.
Because he's not in full go mode anyway. By 75, that's he becomes known for go.
Right.
77, 78, 79. But him kind of easing off and just focusing on characters and they get put through the mill. But even Clem you care for, even Clem you're a bit sad when he dies. Seems all a bit pointless. And he's a good egg, really, isn't he?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was wondering, is there anything? Because if there is, it flies over my head. I'm wondering if either of you have a thought on this. Is there anything allegorical or metaphorical about this? Because you don't call your film Four of the Apocalypse for no reason, right? And also the story feels like very much like an odyssey as well, right? Like it's a very unusual, like the town at the beginning, it almost seems like it is like hell itself or something, right? Like these people descend on it and there's shootouts, and then you never really find out exactly what's going on, right? They pay their way out, and then in the morning they find the things turned into a bloodbath, and then they're even like, so even if they were in hell or something, they're chucked out of hell even, and then they have to cross. And it's very much an Odysseus like journey. So, but I couldn't quite pinpoint if there was any. Is there any specific thing it's referencing or something? I couldn't figure out if it's an allegory for anything, or if it's just a kind of general. I don't know. The Wild West, like this is kind of probably quite realistic in an odd way. Like, it probably wasn't for the weak or faint of heart.
Yeah.
And people did die in childbirth very easily and get sepsis and all these things. And you would have had rampaging psychopaths because you wouldn't have had a proper, like you wouldn't have had a nationwide like police that track down, is basically escaped from one town, then they were outlaws, right? Until they turned up somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's you ask yourself the question, what's this film got to say? Is it saying something? Is there a message anywhere? Because I can't really see it, other than the Wild West was hard.
Right.
I mean, I get the impression it was meant to be really symbolic, but the symbols themselves kind of went over my head. But I think it was intentionally symbolic, but I don't know if it was meant to be clear symbols, so
like a specific thing. Yeah,
I think it's just sort of like take what you get from it.
So we all seem to have kind of broadly found this interesting and enjoyable, and
I found to be honest, I found myself going off on a tangent with this one, where maybe you Brits are more familiar with this whole story, but I actually wasn't familiar with the whole like fascinating story of Lynn Frederick. Actually, didn't know about all that stuff. So I went down to that rabbit hole during this watching this movie, because her being Peter Sellers' ex and all that kind of stuff. I didn't know any of that stuff, but it's probably common knowledge to you guys, but I didn't know any of that stuff. So I thought it was really fascinating, like the whole blacklisting and
not nowadays. I think back in the day, yes, right, because there was the whole Peter Sellers died and left everything to her, and then the estranged children and everything, and people thought of her as a gold digger, and then her career went decline, and
she got blacklisted from Hollywood, even though she died.
She died like at the age of 39. She remarried David Frost, of all people. I mean, no, she is,
and then died mysteriously and stuff.
Yeah. I've always been a fan of her as well as I mean, she was a very attractive screen presence. I always remember her being in Phase 4. Right? She's in Phase.
Yeah.
She's she always struck me in that, and you know, a kind of decent actress as well. But
she's very childlike in this as well, isn't she? She's very She plays very young in this, you know.
This was pre-Peter Sellers, right? This is before any of her marriages, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And apparently she was having. There was a thing where she was. I was reading the trivia that she apparently there was like a rumored romance with Fabio Testi, who at the time was dating Ursula Andress.
That's it. Yeah.
And apparently Ursula Andress was really
did well for himself in The Woman.
So he was doing okay. But apparently, I guess Ursula Andress was really jealous and would come to the set, and there's a lot of tension there. But apparently, Lynn Frederick and Fabio Testi were like gaga over each other or something like that. So it was, I don't know.
They did reteam them as well.
Chemistry.
In another Western, Fabio Testi and Lynn Frederick are also in Red Coat, the Joe D'Amato Western.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen it myself, actually. Actually,
it's ticked 3 boxes already. Lynn Frederick, Fabio Testi, Joe D'Amato.
Yeah. Well, here's the other one that's interesting for me as well, because the other thing I'm currently going through watching is I'm watching the old Jerry Anderson live action series UFO.
Oh yeah,
and
has got one of the best theme tunes in any.
But Harry Baird is kind of a semi-regular UFO. Apparently, a bigger role, but he's in a handful of episodes, and so this was his last film as well, right? He didn't do anything after that. He died in 2005, but he's quite good in this, and he was even starred in a spaghetti western before this. He was in Trinity and Satana, right? As Trinity, which is another one I haven't seen, but I haven't seen it. No. So it's so while we're doing credits, here's some interesting so worth mentioning Lucio Fulci as well. The same year, the other film he made the same year as this was Dracula in the Provinces, right? Which is I've never seen. You've seen it, haven't you, Darren?
Hang on, that's where he bites people on the arse. No,
I think that's. Oh, is it?
No, I'm thinking. No, that's the eroticist.
The eroticist, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen Dracula in the Provinces.
I might not have seen it.
But I think I'm assuming it's a parody.
Yeah. It's comedy, isn't it?
Yeah, and one I need to get round to. But so the screenwriter of this, Ennio Di Concini, has a whole bunch of interesting writing credits, including Evil Eye, Black Sabbath, Salon Kitty, that strange Bluebeard film with Eric Burton. Richard Burton, even. I don't know who Eric Burton is. I was thinking of Eric Burton from The Animals.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah.
But it's Richard Burton's lesser-known cousin.
Yes, but the film he wrote and directed, Ennio Di Concini, which again I've not seen, but in a minute I'm going to explain why all three of us are immediately going to go over and watch it on YouTube, is the kind of semi-documentary film Hitler: The Last 10 Days, which is kind of like a documentary mixed in with new like Saigon footage, basically. Who plays Adolf Hitler? Alec Guinness.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck yeah.
I found it on YouTube. I had a quick look, and I could not take it seriously. Alec Guinness being Adolf Hitler just doesn't compute.
I've got to see it.
Yeah.
I have to see it.
I thought that might be the response.
Yeah, hell yeah.
and it's on YouTube. So
okay, I'll have a bash of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's about all I dug up in terms of that kind of. So yeah, For the Apocalypse is maybe, if not quite as exactly as I remembered it, is definitely superior Western, I think. We all see.
Yeah, and I just think that it's a Western, but it's not quite the Western as well, which is how I kind of started this. There's something of the road movie in it, you know. There's something of hippie culture in it.
You could easily see it. I know this. I mean, this is what it was riffing on in the first place, but it's the kind of thing you can see them having remade as like a Mad Max film. And I know Mad Max is basically, that's what it is, right? It's a Western.
Yeah.
You can take away the horses and just have people in modified cars and Mohicans and. In fact, isn't there a baby in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, or am I remembering that wrong?
I believe that's right. Yeah, I haven't seen it in years, but I think so.
It kind of seems a bit. I can actually. I wish that existed, actually, the For the Apocalypse Italian Mad Max rip-off version.
Well, who knows? There's plenty of them.
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
there's plenty of Italian Mad Max rip-offs.
Or there might be like a Mexican one or something we haven't we don't know about yet.
With Mexican wrestlers, luchadors.
With Mexican wrestlers in masks in the future, masks with slits in the top for the Mohicans to come out for the bad guys.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. There will be a version of that somewhere.
Rains itself.
Something similar to that will exist somewhere.
Right. The search is on.
Yes.
In the meantime,
next one.
Yes. What's cooking next then, Darren? What's next? You've already told us. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Don't Touch the Duckling, or Non si servizia un paperina, which I don't think actually means Don't Touch the Duckling, right? It's.
I think it does.
Oh, does it?
I think so. Yeah.
Something about Donald Duck, and so For the Apocalypse was one thing. Spoilers, but we should really front and center here, because I think we are going to spoil this, right? Because I think we
need to talk about the final scene, don't we?
Yeah, it's necessary to spoil it. So yeah, big honking. There we go. Perfect, Ron. Spoiler alert all the way. And seriously, because even though it's a great film, I think anyway, even if you want to be experiencing this not knowing.
Yeah.
Well, Ron didn't know what was going to happen. It was his first time viewing this, so he can really talk to this more than we can. But it's kind of a surprise, right? It's not.
Yeah, well, it's a giallo, so it's a murder mystery. So if you know who did it.
Yeah. Did you know? Then, did you figure it out, Ron?
I had my suspicions. Yeah.
Okay. But you would agree it's still a pretty good reveal.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Take it away, Daz.
Okay, so so 1972, Lucio Fulci. I didn't actually make any notes on this film because I watched it while I was on holiday, so I've been a bit naughty. So everything's coming off the top of my head.
Okay.
Thomas Millian. Yeah. Thomas Millian's in it again as the reporter.
For a bit of context, this comes in. We mentioned it. This comes between The Eroticist.
Yeah.
And White Fan. So
yes,
again, just giving a good example, we did the whole Argento Fulci thing. The thing you say as well is Fulci had a lot more breadth, right? He did all sorts of shit.
Children's films,
starting off
comedies.
With the Ciccio and Franco things, which are definitely acquired taste.
I've never seen one. I've never seen one of them.
I saw one for the first time the other day. I was actually quite surprised that I quite enjoyed it. Because whatever Ciccio is doing in that film, he's doing this kind of mugging, like Jerry Lewis turned up to 10 thing. But it was so over the top, I found myself quite enjoying it on like a surreal level.
Okay.
Anyway.
So this is kind of... So previous to this, Fulci would have done one on top of the other which isn't really a giallo, and Lizard and Woman's Skin, which I think is 2 years before.
Yeah.
Or even actually, he would have done this. I think Lizard and Woman's Skin's about 71.
Yes, the one just
if
before.
I remember. It's just before, yeah.
And
which is
sorry
another.
to interrupt you. We should probably mention, because we didn't do it. We forgot to mention as well when we were doing For the Apocalypse that Fulci did, of course, do a couple of westerns before that.
Oh yeah, Massacre Time and Silver Saddle.
Yeah. Which were a bit more what you'd expect of
a bit more straightforward.
Yeah. So For the Apocalypse is probably the pick of his westerns. But yeah, anyway, we forgot to mention that earlier. So yes, so this was one on top of the other, Lizard and Woman's Skin, and then I suppose after this, Psychic counts as a giallo.
Yeah, Psychic, and then the next thing he's doing is New York Ripper, which is also a giallo, and technically.
Then, Murder Rock.
Oh, Murder Rock. Yes, Murder Rock. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's the one in the roller disco run.
For those who don't know, what's a giallo, Darren? Because some people don't know what a giallo is.
Right, okay, yes. So, yes, giallo comes from the Italian for yellow, which was the colour of the cover. All the Agatha Christie and other murder mystery books were sold as back in the day. I couldn't tell you a decade. And then so mystery hand for murder mystery in Italian is giallo, gialli, plural, and that got applied to cinema as soon as they started doing murder mysteries. And usually when we talk about gialli, they're usually from the 60s and 70s and 80s, 60s and 70s really, and usually have a good old sprinkling of violence. Yeah,
they're kind of like murder. They're like whodunits on steroids, right? If we're gonna go 90s fanzine shit.
Yeah, so it's usually POV shots, someone in black gloves.
Yeah.
And it's they're usually killed either in imaginative ways or very gory ways.
Yeah.
Usually in a point of view.
And usually beautiful women as well, being killed in stylish ways. Yeah.
So anyway, so this is, apart from one bit, this is not really stylish at all in terms of the murders, or even particularly the gore.
It's not a typical giallo, certainly. It doesn't jump out. You wouldn't show this, even though I would argue it's maybe, one of the very best of its type, if you were to put it in the giallo category. It's not atypical. It's not typical. It is atypical. It's not typical, right? You wouldn't show this as an example of this is what a giallo is.
This isn't a textbook giallo, although it does follow the format.
Yeah.
But it introduces lots of these other elements, like, the buzzword in cinema at the moment is kind of folk horror, isn't it?
Right.
And there are a lot of kind of folk horror vibes about this, because two of the characters are like, village sorcerers, village witches,
right?
Who fall under suspicion. So anyway, Thomas Millian's in it. Barbara Boucher is in it. Who else is in it? Florinda Balkan is in it.
From Lizard and Woman's Skin.
Yeah. Doing a fucking great job. Who else is in it?
Irene Papas. Mark Porrell.
Yeah.
From Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man.
Yeah.
Which is a film I rather enjoy. George Wilson. Yeah.
George Wilson. Yeah, that's the big names, really.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's this great sort of opening shot, isn't there, with Florinda Balkan, who's this like village kind of weirdo witch type woman, who's kind of to the sound of like this kind of warbling kind of folk song, I suppose, that kind of opening music, kind of digging up a child's skeleton or baby's skeleton.
Very small skeleton.
Yeah. And, you know, she's doing it sort of on the brow of a hill where there's this huge, like, flyover kind of freeway, motorway kind of thing, bypass thing.
Yes.
And, it's kind of a culture clash.
Just on the edge of... It's symbolic, clearly. It's just on the edge of being a bit too much, but I think it's
just about gets away with it.
Yeah,
just about does it. So anyway, long story short, kids start getting killed, children start getting killed.
Yeah.
And a variety of local figures fall under suspicion. So you've got suspects, you've got the witch, so Florinda Balkan's witch.
Yeah.
You've got Barbara Boucher's sort of sex kitten, but has been in trouble in the big city around
she's
drugs.
Like a former juvenile delinquent or something who's been sent out to the country, and she's a bit of a cock tease, even to the point of kind of seducing and teasing a little boy in a scene which, you know, some would find problematic, I guess.
Yeah. But it doesn't stop it from being sexy as hell.
Yeah, we'll get to Barbara Boucher.
We will. So she falls under suspicion. Who else falls under suspicion?
Well, there's a George Wilson character a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there's an earlier, the first one is this...
the village idiot, isn't it?
Yeah, we should have written his name down, actually, but I forgot. But yeah, he's the first one, right? Because, the first child that goes missing, there's a ransom, and there's a place where they have to put the money, and then this guy... So, yeah, basically, and of course, the increasing kind of level of lynch mob hysteria as well. And Florinda Balkan, in particular... is horrendously, even though she's been found not guilty, she couldn't possibly be. The thing is, you know, she's considered a witch and all of this, and she's already been
she's already an outcast, isn't she?
Yeah, and she's been tarnished by having something to do with it. So so she has this horrendous chain whipping set piece set to music, right? Which is one of the really memorable parts of the film. It's really well done. Until eventually Milian and Boucher kind of figure it out that and again, spoilers, it is of course the benevolent priest Marc Porel, who it turns out is basically killing, because these boys, you know, they're like, you know, they're doing what all kind of rural village boys do to kind of, you know, they're left to their own devices. They're, you know, smoking and stuff, and they find out like where there's a hut where some men fuck some hookers, and they peek on them, and the Marc Porel is basically saving their souls before they
sin, isn't it?
Before they sin, he's basically doing off, and quite cleverly. It's quite interesting. It's, you can totally like, sometimes with these giallos they're super contrived, but what I quite like about this one is it's really easy to understand why all these other people fall under this kind of small-minded, small-town suspicion and get scapegoated. And then it turns out, you know, it's I didn't find it stretched credulity.
No.
Obviously all of these in one space do a little bit if it was real life, but you know, it doesn't say, like, sometimes you can tell they worked backwards and tried to see how they could fit them. This feels, even though I'm sure that's how they did it, so they could join all the dots, but it plays out, it feels more organic, and it doesn't feel mechanical, and it doesn't feel as if they've trying to get a square peg into a round hole, you know. It's fairly realistic.
And it doesn't turn on a dime at the end either.
No, it's not like it's that guy at the very beginning of the film who we saw step off a bus off the rest of the film. He's or something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and he's in there. He's he has various scenes throughout the film, and he's always very nurturing towards the boys, and he's all very concerned about the murders going on. And Barbara Boucher is making mysterious phone calls and disappearing in the middle of the night in her car.
Yeah.
So it might be her.
But it does kind of all add up.
Oh, yeah. And Florinda Balkan as well, is while she's alive, she's making voodoo dolls of the children.
Yeah, and that's well done.
So,
the way that she feels guilty because it turns out she thinks she's killed them because she makes dolls, right? But it's got nothing to do with it. But
no.
So how did you get on with this, Ron?
Well, I can just start with all of them. You go one.
Well, the thing is, I know what Darren thinks. Well,
I know what he thinks.
Yeah, so it's more interesting for us to kind of.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was a solid murder mystery, I guess, right? So, I mean, definitely for in terms of the story or the content. I mean, it was a little different in that it decided to go with like child murders rather than just like regular murders or beautiful women murders. And there's a lot of good red herrings. I think it sets up like a decent whodunit, right? I mean, you think it's this person, no, it must be her, or no, it must be him, or whatever. So, and then as usual, the least likely person ends up being the killer, right? Kind of thing, the one who's like the really the kind priest that just helps teach them soccer, right? It's or football, sorry. And along the way there's lots of like good suspense and good character work. I thought it was an enjoyable movie. I don't really know that I have that much to say about it. I just thought it was a good, decent whodunit, so.
Did you find, for instance, so there's we'll leave the finale for later on because I think that's kind of worth bringing up. But for instance, that chain whipping sequence, did that jump out at you at all? Like, did that feel like an ill fit in so much as because it's quite violent or gratuitous, or did it feel kind of a piece, or did it shock you, or did it surprise you, or did it?
No, I don't think it felt out of place. I thought it was, I mean, definitely you could feel like the small town, it would lead to vigilantism, and definitely like, people, witch hunts and literally and figuratively, paranoia, raising, and that it's you. And especially in this case, she even claims that she had something to do with it. And, they already hated her for being a witch, so to speak. So it was just sort of like their excuse to do it. And I thought it fit in quite well. I thought it was suitably kind of shocking, enough to make you care about this kind of crazy witch woman, dealing with mud dolls. So in that case, it gave her some pathos and empathy. So
it's quite a nasty demise.
Yeah, because otherwise you didn't really care that much about that character. You thought she was just kind of this.
Well, I'm glad you said
that.
Yeah, no, because it reinforces, I think, a belief that me and Darren might have had over the years as well. Is like so because Fulci is known as the Gore guy later on for Zombie Flesh, which is Beyond and House by the Cemetery and stuff like that, and obviously then the generation before us in a way kind of went out and seeked out more obscure Fulci films before they were, because this wasn't readily available until relatively recently, certainly not in HT. But so they would have seized on violence in the films and then kind of accidentally found at the same time, oh, this is quite a good film, but their entry point would have been looking for more gore.
Or gore, right?
Yeah, and I think me and Darren have both felt over the years, don't touch it directly. It does have the gore, but that's almost like by the by, like even if it didn't have the gore, I think this film, but the gore underlines something rather than being gratuitous. Like it's impactful. The chain whipping, the last scene is a little, I don't know,
that felt, that I would say that felt a little gratuitous, because I really didn't need it at all. and it just felt a little bit like they wanted to do some adding on, so of course, just to talk about what we're talking about, so finally there's a big battle with the priest and the good guy on the top of a cliff, and then the priest gets thrown off the cliff.
That apparently Milian and Perel really didn't like each other, so apparently that that fist fight was somewhat for real.
Oh really? Okay. Anyway, so so very, very kind of like not so believably, he ends up getting thrown off the cliff, and goes off the cliff, and then instead of just falling down to his death, you show a close up of this very obviously a mannequin getting its skin ripped off as it kind of like shreds all the way down hits the rocks as it goes all the way down, which so I mean, I get what he was going for there, but yeah, I didn't need that. Like, just the fall over a cliff is enough, right?
I like excuse me.
Yeah.
I like the concept.
I like
as he's going down the cliff.
Right.
Blow, because he kind of bounces off rocks on the way down, doesn't he? Each blow is a flashback to him having good times with the kids.
Right.
So I like that concept.
It's sort of like retribution, like come up with, he's getting this is for this one, and this is for this one, this is for this one.
But it just, the budget just wasn't up for it. You can't overcome that. You can't overcome that in that close up.
Is separating, because that's what I was struggling with this time. I was trying to figure out, because obviously we've always thought that scene is slightly hokey, right? But it's even more kind of evident in watching it in HD. But I was trying to figure out, do I have a problem with it thematically, like it's too much, or is it just because it looks hokey? And I think I've come down on
I think it's just because it looks hokey.
Yeah, I think I agree with Darren. I think it is, they do earn that, and it is an interesting I don't think it is necessarily gratuitous. It's just the fact that it looks a little bit shoddy.
Yeah. So it's got a reason to be there. It's got a reason to be there.
Yeah. When I said it was gratuitous, I think it was because even though they must have realized that this wasn't going to look that good, they still put it in. I think if I was directing it, I would have been at some point I would have said, nah, that looks bad. Let's just cut it and let's just go for the all over the cliff, So I think by leaving it in, it was almost like, I have to have this scene. It really is, but it was at the expense of the ending of the film.
Yeah, it does. It brings you at the film. It breaks the illusion.
Brings it down. Yeah.
So. Where and the chain whipping, funnily enough, made with the same budget, and the makeup effects aren't that good.
No, but it works well enough, doesn't it? Yeah.
I think the emotional impact is more there than just the falling off the cliff.
The chain whipping, this time watching it, reminded me a little bit of another film where it kind of divides audience, where people it either works or if they think it's too gratuitous, it takes them out the film. Was the 2000 whatever version of The Killer Inside Me. I think it's and of all people, Jessica Alba has it's kind of like a close to mid of basically getting her face beaten to a pulp, and it's horrendous and like really looks realistic and like, because they had a proper budget. But it reminded me a little bit of that scene, whereas I think some people kind of thought it was necessary for the film, and then other people just thought that's just crossing a line and it doesn't have to be there,
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the chain whipping it's kind of the fulcrum of the film in many ways. I think it's and it's I've always seen it as decades ahead of its time in terms of composition. The beating to music. And I know Kenneth Anger's doing stuff with music and not always violence, but he's doing the stuff that you usually associate with Tarantino or Robert Rodriguez or something from the 90s.
Scorsese's already done it a little bit in...
true, yeah.
He hasn't quite done Mean Streets yet, right? But some of his earlier films did have that, but no one would have seen them really.
No, exactly. Yeah. So Fulci's on the cutting edge with that stuff.
That is the comparison, because it's the radio thing as well. It is that people do compare it directly to the ear cutting in Reservoir Dogs. Right? It does have a similar kind of
yeah. But and that's got a reason to be there as well.
Yeah.
And it's the whole no one's looking. She's you've got all these tourists coming over the bypass, seeing her but looking away, and that, and it's just like one of these pointless deaths, isn't it?
Yeah. And the people bypassing again, just on the edge of
country and city.
Yeah, but they're like they don't want to be reminded of the old way. They're on the bypass to the future. They've left behind this superstitious, and when they see it, they're like, no, not looking at that. Let's pretend it exists. La la la.
Yeah. And again, and talking to music again.
Riz Ortolani, right? Is the
Riz Ortolani, Mr. Cannibal Holocaust himself.
Yeah. In fact, I think there's a piece from this that was reused apparently in Cannibal Holocaust.
Okay. But again, it's Fulci kind of playing against type in a giallo. Because you would in this period you'd expect some quite funky jazz to be going on, or something maybe even electronic. 72. Like Lizard in Woman's Skin, it's all jazz, isn't it?
Right.
Or what Jess Franco's doing, in Spain. But anyway, but yeah, it's again, it's playing against type and sort of thinking a little bit outside of the genre and having it work perfectly. Because her kind of slowly crawling up this hill to this soppy love song, this Riz Ortolani love song, bang on, works a treat, grabs you by the heartstrings.
So what's Fulci's deal with Donald Duck then? Because Donald Duck turns up in this film, and then it's a key component of the New York Ripper, right? Which is arguably the nastiest film that Lucio Fulci ever made.
Most definitely the nastiest film he's ever done.
Yeah. We'll have to get round to watch that one day, I think. But it's just interesting. I'd forgotten that Donald Duck was in this.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So I don't know what his problem with it. But let's get to the most important point. How hot is Barbara Boucher in this film?
Extremely.
Hell, Jesus Christ, is she smoking in this film?
Yeah.
I think she might not have been my type or something back in the day, so I never thought of it. But last night I had my first Barbara Boucher wank.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I mean,
if we'd have known, we would have got you a gift. Send you some flowers or some fruit basket.
I'm now a proper fan. I shall be checking out. But no, I was. Did you remember that from before, Darren?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
I remember that weird undulating decoration thing they've got. That undulating.
Right.
It's like a decoration. It looks like a fish tank, but it's got like iron filings in it or something.
Right.
And she's like, "You don't remember that bit? No. You're looking at me silly."
Yeah, it's what you're on about now.
That scene begins, and the camera's looking through. Do you know what I'm talking about, Ron?
No.
Oh. Anyway, I can assure you.
Right.
There's this like weird, like ornamental kind of undulating, like it's a bit like like psychiatrists have those balls that go like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a bit like one of those sorts of things.
Okay.
But very different.
Yeah. What's that?
Doesn't matter.
Barbara Boucher?
Well, that scene begins with her being shot through that ornament.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it makes it already a little bit surreal.
That's interesting.
But yeah,
you have I didn't know that you had a beautiful woman with executive toy fetish. I wasn't aware of.
Well, I didn't before, but I do
But
now.
you do now, yeah. How about you, Ron? Would you care to perv out on
Yeah.
Fulci, or
I'm more into the clacking balls, so yeah, beautiful one with clacking balls. So.
Okay, no, nicely avoided.
There are specialist outlets for that.
But yeah, there we go. So don't torture. I mean, don't, for a start, as a piece of advice, don't torture duckling unless you're French and you're making some delicious pâté or something like that. But other than that, don't. But do watch this film. I think it's a superior example of its type. I would say. And
yeah, but but it also kind of goes outside of its type as well, which is kind of it's kind of the reason I chose this double bill, is that they're both within the genre, but kind of have tendrils moving all over the place outside it.
Yes, agreed. But a good double bill, actually. I thank you for programming it, Darren, because I enjoyed rewatching both of these. Young Ron there seems to have enjoyed being introduced to them both.
Great. Yeah, thanks for coming on, Darren.
Thank you for having me.
And yes, I think we shall go now rather than belabor the point.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, and we shall be responding, me and Ron, to Duckling next time. And Darren, you're welcome back anytime, of course. In fact, you might be back a little bit sooner than we think, because Ron's going to be a bit busy coming up, listeners, viewers.
Yes.
So you might not see him for a little bit. Or you might. We're not quite sure yet. We'll figure it out.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, then.
Okay, take care.
Very good.
Bye.
See you soon.
Thank you. See you.